Gen Z is fed up across the world. You can see it where there's now massive protests across the world. We've seen it throughout the entirety of 2025. So ever since Trump pretty much became president, you've seen the protests in Nepal, which ended up overthrowing their corrupt government. You see the protests in Indonesia. You see it in Madagascar. You've seen other protests. You've seen the one in UK, the ones in Ireland. So Gen Z is fed up, and they're fed up with the corruption. They're fed up with immigration. They're fed up with a lot of things. And there's now a new protest that's going on in Mexico, our next door neighbor, and this is massive for the U.S. because the protesters are actually protesting against the current regime and the people that are in power right now, and they're protesting against them because of the massive amount of crime and the massive amount of influence that the cartels have in the government. And this is particularly big for the U.S. because the U.S. has been trying to fight the cartels for a while now. They've been trying to fight them ever since Trump came into office, and they've really pushed for these cartels to be put down and for them to be under control and to be arrested and be put in jail. Yet, we've not been able to attack them at their main base. And their main base is in Mexico. We can't attack them. We can't go in there and actually arrest them. Mainly because the actual Mexican government is controlled by the Mexican cartels. And this is massively affecting the... because they're being controlled by... because the government's controlled by the cartels, the U.S. hasn't been able to go in there and actually clean up the cartels at all. We can't send in the military, we can't send in anything at all. And we've offered to help them with the cartel issue and their crime issue. In fact, that was one of the first things Trump tried to do. He offered to help the Mexican government with by sending in the military and going in and basically taking down these cartels. Yet they denied it. Now, I get why they denied it, because of national sovereignty and they don't want another person's military in their own country. But we've offered to help them, and the fact that they denied it shows that they're actively trying to impede the destruction of the cartels. And the Mexican people are seeing this now. And the Mexican government are seeing this, and they're actually starting to stand up. This protest was triggered by a assassination of one of the anti-crime mayors and an anti-crime crime mayor. And basically they're saying they're wanting and the reason this sparked it's because he was a popular mayor, he was anti-crime, and it was most likely that the cartels killed him. So now that Mexicans are seeing that their own people, and particularly their own politicians, are being killed by this has led to protests within Mexico. And now they're actually starting to protest against the Mexican government and the president that's in power right now. And we as America actually want them to succeed. So let's watch the video.
Tense scenes on the streets of Mexico City as protesters clashed with riot police outside the National Palace. Under the banner of Generation Z, thousands...
Yeah, it's Generation Z is starting to wake up. And we're starting to see how bad our country's running. This is seen throughout the world, and I mentioned the protests earlier, the ones in Madagascar, the ones in Nepal that actually worked and overthrew the government. The ones in Indonesia, you're also seeing the protests in UK and other places around the world. So Gen Z is waking up.
Demonstrators had gathered to condemn rising violence. It comes in the wake of the murder of Carlos Manzo, an anti-crime mayor, earlier this month.
We are marching for Carlos Manzo, for the vile murder of Carlos Manzo, because we want justice for him and for all those who have lost their lives and their property at the hand.
Yeah, it's not just the politicians that are under threat. It's mainly the Mexican people that are affected by the cartels. They're the ones that constantly are harassed by the cartels. They're the ones that are being affected by the violence, and they're fed up, and we as America should do something to support them in some way. I don't know how, but we should support the people that are actually protesting the rise of cartels and the crime in Mexico, because we as Americans also have a massive issue with the cartels and the fact that they're sending in so much drugs and their crime into the U.S. So, and also the trafficking within the cartels. So we need to do as much as possible to support these people. Because if we get someone like them into into power, then we can actually we get someone that's actually tough on crime into power, then they'll actually agree to cooperate with the American government and actually allow us to send in military forces to actually deal with these cartels that are actively militant and have a lot of weapons that the cartel that it would also so what's my train of thought there? So once you get the people into power that are actively trying to resist crime, we can they are more likely to support Americans coming in and actually helping them. And this will result in less crime in America and less of the cartels, less trafficking. And also, if the conditions in Mexico improve, it's also less likely for people to cross the Mexican border in search of a better life in America. So it's less likely for them to do that. So it's less likely there will be less illegal immigration and less issues with that. So we need to support these people in somehow. Now, I don't know how we would do that. We could probably fund their politicians in some way, which might be effective, but I don't know how we would do that. But at least the minimum that we can do as Americans is to just support them verbally, just like how I'm doing now. It's to say, go cheer on these protesters, and give them some level of emotional support within with their protests. So that's at least the bare minimum, and that's one of the things I'm doing here. We should just support them as much as possible.
Of criminals.
Carlos Manso, lo que le pasó.
We came because of what happened to Carlos Manzo. For me, this is living proof that people have woken up. We cannot be in the hands of a country ruled by crime.
People are starting to wake up, and this is actually scaring a lot of people in power, particularly in Mexico, because the people in power are definitely corrupt and controlled by the cartels. In fact, Mexico's corruption score is very low. For example, here, the lower the score in the corruption index, the more corrupt it is. So, they have a score of 26. That's one of the lowest in the Northern Hemisphere. And it's also one of the lowest in the world, because there's only like 40 countries that are more corrupt. And those 40 countries include the corrupt regimes in Africa and the dictatorships there. So, a lot of this is... So there's even less corruption. There's even more corruption compared... so still, there's a lot... Only countries like that are clearly dictatorships are more corrupt than Mexico. They are one of the most corrupt countries in the world. They're basically in the... They're so close to only having a 25 on the index. And that's absolutely a failing grade. So this is... And additionally, their corruption has been increasing. So if you look at here, there's the 5%, 5-point decrease in score since 2023. Now that's a large decrease. It's a very large decrease. Especially considering that they were only at 30 before. That is a 16% decrease in their score, and that's a very large percent. And this is going to continue to go down unless they actually deal with the issue of the cartels, because the cartels will just consolidate more and more power as they'll buy off more and more politicians and use means to keep Mexico in their control. So this would only decrease. What they need to do is find a way to actually protest and get control of the government, the people that are anti-crime, anti-cartel. They got to find a way to do that, and I think they should. And I think that might actually happen in the future, since people are, as stated in the video, people are actually waking up, and once they wake up and they're realizing that is a massive issue, they'll probably vote in someone that's massively anti-crime. We saw that in El Salvador with Nayib Bukele. We saw it with Bukele in El Salvador, where he ended up he was very anti-crime, and he eventually just used emergency powers in El Salvador to arrest everyone. So eventually they'll vote someone in there like that, and that would be good for America, and we should support someone like that in there, simply because they're more likely to be pro-American. You see that with Bukele. He's pro-America. He's been a strong ally of Trump. So he's gained a lot of support from the American people. So we should help someone like that get into Mexico, especially since they're right next to us, and what they do actually massively affects us. Because it's not just Mexico that's under threat because of the cartels. It's America. They constantly send in drugs. They do human trafficking. They send in illegal immigrants. They send in the violence. They send in weapons to the local gangs, and all this and all that because of cartels. So we need to do as much as possible to actually stop the cartels and attack them at their home base. And for that to happen, we need someone that's actually anti-cartel and anti-crime within Mexico. And we don't have someone that's in power like that right now. So we just need to do... somehow we need to put... we somehow need to find a way to get someone like that in power. Sadly, the American people can't do much about that. What we need... can't do much about putting someone that's actually anti-crime in power. What we need is for the Mexican people to actually stand up and support someone like that. And I think they're finally starting to do that. And they're finally starting to get fed up.
Manzo, who had urged tough action against armed cartels, was shot on the 1st of November as he attended a Day of the Dead festival. Some in the crowd voiced anger at President Claudia Sheinbaum's party, Morena, and called on the state to step up their endeavours to fight crime.
They do need to step up their enforcement of crime, and I think the person's going to lose power if they don't do this, or at least lose the popular vote. Now they could fake the election, and I think that's very viable, especially in such a corrupt country like Mexico. But she is losing popular support, and if she doesn't do something soon, then she'll lose even more support. Sadly, she's so captured by the cartels that there's a very low chance that she'll actually do something. So and that's got to be frustrating for the Mexican people. It's got to be really frustrating for them. But hopefully, someone that is eventually anti-crime and pro-enforcement is actually put in.
We love Mexico and we are tired. Get out of here, Morena. You are destroying Mexico. This is not Mexico.
It's another thing, if you notice about this protest, if you look through the crowd, like right here, it's a lot of Mexican flags. They're very patriotic, and that's good. We want our fellow patriot. We want countries that we want people in power that are actively pro their own country. First of all, it helps the people there, and that's good for them. And I wish we had that a lot more in America. Since if you look at all of our protests, you never see American flags. You almost never see them. Particularly if you looked at the one in earlier that I talked about this week, one against TPUSA. You did not see a single American flag unless it was someone from TPUSA. No American flags. All identity flags, Palestine flags, foreign country flags. And I really wish as we as Americans would be more patriotic, like these countries. And that's another thing about these protests. Whenever you notice that there's, you notice there's a lot of flags of another country, like a whole bunch of them, you know it's not America, because a protest in America, simply because we're not patriotic. A lot of our people are not patriotic, and that's one of the things that's actively hurting America right now, because if we don't have people that are patriotic, then we're not going to have a lot of people that are supporting the country, and that's negatively affecting how our country's run. As a lot of the people, in fact, are actually anti-U.S. that are voting, and it's not good for America. And I honestly wish we had a lot more people that are actually patriotic, that support their own country, similar to these people that are Mexican, and how they support Mexico.
Cartels was shot on the 1st of November as he attended a Day of the Dead festival. Some in the...
That's another issue with of how cartels are controlling Mexico. It's because they have been able to use violence to actually eliminate the political opponents and the threat of violence. So anyone that's anti-cartel, they're either going to get killed or they're going to bow down to the cartels simply because they don't want to lose their lives. And the only way to stop that is that you have like a popular uprising within Mexico. And I think that might actually happen eventually because people are getting fed up.
The crowd voiced anger at President Claudia Sheinbaum's party, Morena, and called on the state to step up their endeavors to fight crime.
We love Mexico and we are tired. Get out of here, Morena. You are destroying Mexico. This is not Mexico.
According to authorities in the city, dozens of police officers were wounded in the clashes, along with around 20 civilians. Sheinbaum alleges that the protests, which also took place in other cities across the country, were financed by right-wing politicians who oppose her government.
That just probably lies by the people in power. Because if you actually look at the conditions within Mexico, you can understand why these people are protesting. It's because crime is actually a major issue within Mexico. So it's probably not financed. There's probably some level of finance in some way. But most of these people are probably not even connected to right wing. They're probably actually people that are fed up with the crime. And they actually are fed up with what's happening in their own country. So yeah, people in Mexico are just fed up with what's happening within the government in Mexico. They're absolutely fed up. The thing is, it's going to be hard for them to control what's actually going to go on, and hopefully, because it's going to be hard for the people in Mexico to actually fight against the cartels, simply because they have so much power within Mexico. If you notice here, look, this is a new study by Justice in Mexico. It says the 5th largest employer in Mexico is the cartels. So they have a lot of people employed. So a lot of people are supportive of the cartels because they don't want to lose their job. And that's going to massively... and also they're all going to vote in directions that support the cartel. So it's going to be hard for Mexico to actually... vote in someone that's right-wing. Also, in this study here, the amount of power that Mexico, the cartels have been, the amount of power Mexican cartels have is increasing because they control 30 to 35% right now. Well, in 2022, this is the amount of control that they have, 30 to 35. Now, 4 years earlier, they only said 20. That's a 1.5%, 1.5 times increase, or a 50% increase in control. And this is mainly under the most recent president of Mexico. And the fact that they've gained that much control just shows you how corrupt they are. So hopefully the Mexican people actually do end up supporting someone and getting someone in government that is actually anti-crime, someone that's similar to Bukele in El Salvador. But in the meantime, we should just support them as much as possible, for the average person, because we need someone like Bukele in there, simply so we don't have to fight as much with the cartels and we get them at their basic control.